Cool. So we have our design now. I'm sorry that you can't really, get a full screen capture on it just because this hardware is so old. You can't really download anything more on it. But we have our design on here. So we have the pure blue and then our little stroke line. Always like to go back and just double check it just to make sure you're lined up. Most of the time, if it says 0, then it's fine. But if you really are one of those people that want to make sure everything's lined up correctly, I understand. So we have everything lined up. What I usually like to do is I like to go to Windows. I like to go to Layers, open that up. Now you should see that all the layers that you had in your original file are still here. So keeping that in mind, we want to make sure that everything's lined up now. So we can also go to View and hit Ruler, Show Rulers, and just what you can do is you can pull down the ruler. So now we have a guide. Okay, now we see that it's just a little bit under half an inch. I don't like that necessarily, so I'm just going to, I'm going to make sure this thing is, yeah. So I want to just put it at half an inch, and I am going to unlock everything, pull this down, and use. So there you go. It's finicky, I know, but I want to just pull everything down, make sure it's lined up correctly. I can already see that this is, this is not as close as I want it, or this is not as far as I want it. So I want to go here and deselect these guides. There's a way for you to lock them too, but I personally just like to keep them unlocked. So now everything's lined up for half an inch. Good rule of thumb is to make sure that you have at least 1/4 of room. It's good, it's easy, it's practice, so you don't have to worry about getting so close to it. You can have a little bit of wiggle room for error, but for the most part, keeping it at 1/4 is perfectly fine. Now here's the fun part. You have to worry about what's going to cut first and what's not going to cut first. So, guides are not going to print. So what I want to do is I want to start with the lines and the triangle first. So I'm going to, these little eyeballs and the core, it's just the same as Illustrator, but I want to actually hide those and just keep only the 2 lines and the triangle. So to actually get it to the laser cutter program, I'm then going to do File. I'm only going to go to Print, and I'm just going to hit Print. Don't worry about changing any settings. It's just strictly print. Now I'm going to open up the laser cutter, which is this little red button at the bottom of the screen. Just click that and it should open up. Now here is the actual area of which the laser cutter is seen. I already had it set up to where it's exactly like the table, so the laser cutter doesn't have to worry about trying to fill in this gap with a smaller screen or smaller artboard. So everything's lined up close to it. And before we hit this big green button, I know it's really hard, you want to hit it. I'm going to go to Settings. I'm going to hit Settings. We're working with a thicker piece of paper, so I'm not too concerned with it, but I'm going to go to the Material Database. And there's been a few people that actually have come in and saved some cutting programs into the actual file. So if I'm looking for pieces of paper, there's a lot of places where I can go find that. So we have ceramics, fabric, foam, glass, metal, natural, plastic, rubber. Probably gonna be under rubber. Yeah, paper. So now we have kind of a construction paper. I think it's more like construction paper. So I'm only going to do this, and I'm going to bump this thing down to this thickness Remember, it's 0.01, so I'm gonna keep it as small as this. And I'm gonna hit apply. Now, once you have apply, you theoretically can hit OK and start, and that should work. What I like to do is if you feel like, okay, it can be darker, or it can be lighter, this is what you can fiddle with. You only fiddle with red and blue, but you can go in here and hit blue, and if you feel like it needs to be darker, you can hit the plus sign. If you feel like it'd be lighter, hit this. I haven't messed around a lot with speed and PPI, but keep those the same. I highly recommend trying to underball it first. It's easier to add darker values than to remove darker values. Plus, if you get over a certain range, you actually there's be a chance of you actually setting it on fire. So, with that being said, I'm not going to touch anything. I'm going to hit apply, hit OK, and it should be ready to go. So theoretically, I can just hit green and we can run it. So I'm going to do that real quick.